BBOR, Black Box Online Radio, coming to you from West Virginia. Today we're going back to the year 2006, very specifically, the 1st of November from '06, because we're going to be talking about the murder of Adrienne Shelly. Adrienne Shelly, of course, was perhaps more well known in her lifetime as an actress, but following her death, everyone just seemed to look upon her as an aspiring film director who is probably going to take the independent film circuit by storm. Adrienne Shelly became very famous for the film Waitress that she wrote, directed, and starred in alongside Kerry Russell. When I was just thinking about the lead actress in that film, I almost referred to her as Felicity Russell, but then I was like, wait a second, Felicity isn't actually her name. That was something else. No, I mean, Waitress was an amazing film. I mean, it's a comedy with lots of heart and soul. It's very inspirational. I mean, you walk away from that film feeling good and you want to go to a pie shop, more or less. Highly recommended if anyone hasn't seen it. But the famous thing that surrounded that is the tragedy. While Adrienne Shelly got her film to premiere at the Sundance Film Festival and it would go on to reach a variety of theaters around the country, she had already passed away. On November 1st, 2006, she became the victim of a murder. And this murder was perpetrated by an individual named Diego Pilco. But the question was, what on earth happened? There are a variety of sources out there that will give some sort of conflicting information about this online. And when we first heard about this, back in 2006 and 2007, the mainstream narrative was that an individual who was a construction worker nearby murdered Adrienne Shelly over a noise complaint. That was something that was talked about on the television, and that was what you would say in conversations with your friends, that a construction worker murdered her over the noise complaint. And I had the kind of idea that, well, that must have been that she was making noise and he was making noise and somebody told the other person to stop, to keep it down, and that turned into an argument that got out of control. And I believe I even had a conversation with somebody once about saying the way that they portrayed it was he was making lots of noise and she came over and told him to stop and he got really mad, lost his temper, later on went back to the apartment and murdered her. A lot of people were saying a lot of things, but what really happened with Adrienne Shelly and Diego Pilco? The first thing that I would say is that I think the reason why there are a lot of conflicting narratives that are going on about this is because Diego Pilco, the perpetrator in this one, openly lied to the police and the investigators, like many people do when they're trying to avoid life in prison. He wasn't telling the truth, so he fabricated a narrative. What it seems like happened in a more kind of concrete set of step-by-step actions that took place is that Adrienne Shelly was found in her bathroom, hanging from the rod on the shower curtain. Something was tied around her neck, and it appeared to have been a suicide by hanging. And her friends and family just said she was not suicidal, absolutely not, and that this was something that just completely shocked them. The forensic examiners were also very much in doubt that this was a suicide. And this is where the stuff really starts to get very hazy. There was this video that was put out even on YouTube by Crime Vault. Once again, the name of their channel is Crime Vault, that had a lot of, there are a lot of problems that I would have with this video, but one of the points that I think that they portrayed well is that there were 2 footprints found in the bathroom that didn't make any sense at all to the forensic examiners, like to the forensic scientists, the investigators. They just didn't seem to make sense. They described them, though, as there were 2 muddy footprints that were found, one on the toilet seat and then one on the edge of the bathtub, meaning it seemed like somebody had perhaps staged the scene and tried to make it look like Adrienne Shelly had committed suicide. Okay, even if we learned that Diego Pilco was involved, well, how would all of this taken place? How would this have gone about? The police identified a very particular Reebok shoe that had left the 2 prints, and while Crime Vault said they were muddy footprints, in other sources you can read that it was actually dust from the nearby renovation site where the construction workers were doing their business, and I think that makes a lot more sense. And so I was like, what? Muddy footprints? I mean, like, how would those even get there? It seems more like that they were imprints from the dust at the nearby renovation site. But the police were able to locate that same footprint to the renovation site, and it only was a matter of time before they narrowed it down to a particular individual named Diego Pilco, who was an undocumented individual from Ecuador. And when Crime Vault put out that upload, they said that the name of their upload is Adrienne Shelly, the actress killed by an Ecuadorian. And I know it's kind of ironic to be talking about those words because I almost took some exception to that. I was like, I don't care what country he was from. I mean, that's so almost irrelevant to the case. What's much more important are the actions that took place. It doesn't matter what background he had. It's more like, was he guilty or not of this crime? And yes, indeed. I mean, he confessed that he was involved with this. The way that Diego Pilco described this is he didn't speak English at the time, and Adrienne Shelly did not speak Spanish, but he was making some noise during the renovation process, construction equipment. He was making some noise, and she came over and told him to stop. He didn't understand a word that was going on, but he could sense her body language so well that he knew she was going to call the police. He was undocumented, and he was very much afraid. And as I said, though, they're conflicting things. Different articles will say different step-by-step processes, but it doesn't matter because all of them are false, and we'll see. Like on Crime Vault, they said that Diego walked over, followed Adrienne Shelly back toward her apartment, and actually punched her in the head, causing her to fall backward and hitting her head on a coffee table. In a different source, it said that he threw a hammer at her and she got really scared. But then, as we already said, though, like there's that other narrative that he could just sense her body language and thought she was calling the police because he was undocumented. Anyway, those things are not true. Eventually, Diego Pilco would go on to confess that he broke into Adrienne Shelly's apartment, which she was using as an office. I don't believe that this was the one that she actually lived in. A lot of the things are saying very clearly that she was using this as an office. We also have the channel Lovely Leo. That's right, Loveli, Lovely Leo, which has talked about the death of Adrienne Shelly as another source, saying that he went back to the apartment that she was using as an office to steal money from her purse. And she caught him in the act red-handed and was immediately going to the phone to call the police. So then Diego held her down, was able to grab a towel nearby, and strangled her to death. Because I gotta tell you, I understood nothing about what was going on. I mean, someone throws a hammer at somebody, or even if that thing that he said that he punched her in the face and she fell backward and hit her head, and then he would stage the scene as a suicide. I was like, what on earth were they talking about? And to be very clear, the coroner did determine that she had died from asphyxiation, and that did seem consistent at first with hanging, but it's like, if he had just punched her in the face, why on earth would he stage the scene as like, to make it look like a hanging? She might not necessarily be dead. That just was very bizarre. It asks a lot of questions. It's not impossible. I repeat, it's not impossible for somebody to do things like that. How many times have we seen this on Forensic Files and 48 Hours and Dateline? People do weird things. I'm even reminded of some cases right now, but not to get off topic. So, in short, red flags go off for a reason, because that story wasn't true. It seems like Diego Pilco was trying to steal from her purse. She caught him red-handed, and then he assaulted her, grabbed a towel, strangled her, and then hung her body. He hanged her body from a place in the bathroom, putting one footprint on the toilet seat and another one on the edge of the bathtub. The scene was completely staged, excuse me. Then, the reason why that Diego Pilco changed his story and confessed to all this is he wanted to avoid life in prison, and eventually he was sentenced to 25 years without the possibility of parole. We're going to be jumping over to an article from the New York Post, and I have to tell you, I don't necessarily like the New York Post that much as a publication. I often find that there's some peculiar slants in the New York Post, but the reason why I chose this article is they're talking about a lot of the comments that the family and the husband of Adrienne Shelly were making after the sentencing of Diego Pilco. The New York Post writes, "The husband of murdered actress Adrienne Shelly yesterday told his wife's killer to rot in jail, a sentiment echoed by the judge who threw him behind bars for 25 years. And as we said, 25 years without the possibility of parole, and he pled to a lesser charge. I believe it was first-degree manslaughter. You deserve no mercy. I want you to rot in that cell, Shelley's bereft husband, Andy Ostroy, told pudgy strangler Diego Pilco. For the last 499 days, I've been consumed by unfathomable grief. I will spend the rest of my days hating you with every fiber of my being for what you have done. Shelley's parents also said that they will never forgive the person that took away their daughter. Diego Pilco, age 20, was a teenage illegal immigrant when he hanged the vibrant mom from a shower rod in the Greenwich Village apartment in November of 2006. Shelley's little girl, Sophie, was only 2.5 years old when her mother was found dead. Sophie will never, ever again hold her mother's hand, kiss her mother's face, or feel a mother's hug, said Adrienne Shelly's mother, Elaine. Now I know sadness as I have never, ever known before. You have taken her from us, and for that, there can never be any forgiveness. So the family is just very distraught by this. Pilco confessed that he strung the woman up to make it look like a suicide after a botched robbery. And that's what we said, though. I mean, that sounds like it answers the questions way more clearly than all this thing about throwing a hammer at her or punching her in the face and she fell back and hit her head. Then he staged the scene. It's like, when I first heard that, I'm not going to lie to you, it was like, I was like, well, maybe she wasn't dead if he punched her in the face. She went back and hit her head, and then, like, he hanged her from the shower rod in the bathroom. I was like, maybe she wasn't even dead at that point. Wouldn't there have been a chance to resuscitate her and just get away? And, I mean, it's not impossible that someone would do those types of actions, but it definitely seemed like that would escalate the situation as opposed to de-escalate the situation. That would be creating more trouble for Diego Pilco, not less. This whole thing about the botched robbery, he was stealing from her purse, she caught him red-handed, so he attacked her. That seems like it is much more feasible. The illegal alien, that's how they describe him, although some people have exception with that term. The illegal alien was painting at a renovation job one flight down from Shelley's Abingdon Square apartment and had followed her to the door during his lunch break, bent on rape, robbery, or both. Although I don't believe that there was any discussion of rape in any of the other sources. Speaking through a Spanish interpreter yesterday, Pilco made a faint apology attempt. Killing Shelley had not been his intention. When he went to her building that day, he insisted. I came with a purpose to do work and to help my family out. I have suffered because I know what I have done. Well, I mean, he's suffering, but she's dead and he's still alive. There's that much. And by pleading to this lesser charge of first-degree manslaughter, only getting 25 years in prison, I mean, he'll be released from jail at the age of 45, being sentenced at age 20, if I can do the math. He's going to get out of jail at 45 and go on to continue his life, whether it's in Ecuador or in the United States of America. So I don't really feel anything for him, scumbag. Shelley, age 40, was helping to raise Ostroy's teenage daughter and died at the height of her creativity. And that's the biggest thing. She was on the verge of becoming a household name. She was on the verge of putting out just an amazing series of films as a director. Her last movie, Waitress, which she wrote, directed, and acted in, wound up triumphing at the Sundance Film Festival before scoring good reviews and big ticket sales at the theaters nationwide. And that concludes the New York Post article. And the thing is, though, it's like, she really was on the verge of doing a lot of excellent things with her career. And it's like, it's an absolute horrible shame, especially even for the family, when you hear the words about how distraught they are. When you sort of think about the selfishness and the maliciousness associated with the actions of Diego Pilco, it's pathetic, to be honest. And then I don't know if he's showing genuine remorse or he is just feeling bad that he has to spend 25 years in prison. It's really difficult to tell only by a few comments there, but it's not too important what he's feeling, because the process of imprisonment isn't only about, well, are you trying to get the person to feel some sense of empathy? Are you trying to get the person to feel some sense of emotion? No, it's like you did something horrible, now you have to pay the price for it. You did the crime, now you have to do the time, as cliched as that sound. And in all reality, we said it very clearly, he's going to be getting out at the age of 45, and the family will never see their daughter again, their wife, the mother, all of that. So I can completely comprehend why they are so frustrated and why they are so enraged. I mean, I can't comprehend the emotions 100% because I've never been in that situation, but I mean, they're being a little unforgiving. They're being very unforgiving, actually, but I'm not surprised at their unforgiving nature, I should say. And this article from the New York Post was written by Laura Italiano, and was simply titled Rot Bastard. Rot Bastard. Yes, you heard that correctly. No, when it comes to this one, I think because of Diego Pilco's conflicting narratives that he was giving the police and changing his story from time to time, let alone this is partnered with the boom of social media. We're talking about 2006. People are sharing articles on the internet. People are sharing lots of things, even just through social media, messages, messengers taking off and all that. And I was like just having conversations about this with people where they're saying different things. You know, it's like, because that really is the biggest thing that they would say. You would probably even hear, if you were to walk up to somebody and ask them about how Adrienne Shelly died, you might hear that somebody killed her over a noise complaint. I mean, that was all over the television after this happened. And during the publicity and promotions for the film Waitress, that's what they were saying. Adrienne Shelly was murdered because of a noise complaint. It doesn't really seem like that's the case. What it seems like is that Diego Pilco was going to her apartment to rob her, possibly to do something else, but I don't believe the sexual assault actually took place. He even says that he was trying to steal money from her purse, and that situation got out of control, and that led to an attack, and then he staged a scene trying to make it look like a suicide. But I definitely think the botched robbery would give him more of a motivation to strangle her with a towel and to prevent her from calling the police, as opposed to the thing about punching her in the face, throwing the hammer at her, and he just got really scared. I mean, that's just, that has too many problems with it. And I mean, I think though, once we start following a lot of true crime cases, we can start to see that, wait a second, that doesn't quite make sense. And I gotta tell you, a lot of times, people do things that do not make sense, or that's not necessarily what you would do in that particular scene. That's not what I would do if I were faced with a problem or a conflict. People do unpredictable things, and people do illogical things. But in this case, I think it's actually somewhat straightforward. He was trying to rob her. He was trying to steal from her. He got caught, and the situation escalated out of control. There are going to be a lot of details that are going around about this, saying that he got into a shouting match with Adrienne Shelly, where he's simply trying to tell her, I don't speak English, and she's shouting at him, and he's responding in Spanish, simply telling her that he doesn't understand what she's saying. I doubt any of that actually happened. I think that this is much more like he was trying to steal, he got caught, and that led to the horrific events that took Adrienne Shelly's life. All we can say is rest in peace to Adrienne Shelly. Heart goes out to the family, and that's all that we will have to say about this one for now. You know, it's like she was taken before her time, and a very, very good filmmaker. I also really liked her performance in Factotum. She has somewhat of a minor character in that one, but Factotum with Matt Dillon, based on the Bukowski novel, I mean, that's a great film that I recommend. What I say about the movie Factotum is it's the best film where nothing actually happens. It's just one of those things that follows somebody's life. Adrienne Shelly has a minor role in that one. And I would just like to ask now, do you have anything to say about the murder of Adrienne Shelly? What comments would you like to leave in the section below? If you like this upload, you can hit the like button. And if you haven't subscribed yet, you're welcome to do so. But that's all for me now. Until next time.